Been a few years for me.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you.
And I'm seeing her pictures on Facebook from Hawaii.
Oh, well, that must be nice. Do a quick head count.
It seems like we're missing quite a few mayors.
Okay. Oh, let me recount. Let's see. Okay, Mayor, Chair, we do have a quorum at this point if you want to go ahead and get started.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the June 17th, 2024 Washington County Coordinating Committee meeting. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda is public comments. Stephen, do we have any public comments?
We didn't have anyone who signed up in advance to provide a comment. If there's anyone in the attendees who would like to provide a comment, you can raise your hand at this point. Oh, I see Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg. I think we just need to promote her to panelist.
Okay.
Is there anyone on the call that wanted to raise your hand to provide a comment at this point? You can do that now. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands.
All right, that brings us to item number 2, introductions roll call. And I know Mr. Edison is subbing today for Stephanie. Anyone else who's subbing today?
I'm Kelly Martin with ODOT. I'm subbing for Stephanie Turner.
Okay, welcome.
Looks like we have.
And yes, I am subbing for Mayor Beatty today.
All right.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and do our roll call in jurisdiction order like we normally do. So for Banks, Mayor Jones. We have Councilor Edison. Thank you. For City of Beaverton, we had Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Present.
Thank you. Cornelius, Mayor Delane.
Present.
Thank you. Let's see. I don't think we have a rep for City of Durham on. Durham. Yeah, okay. Forest Grove, Mayor Wenzel.
Here.
Thank you. Let's see. Hillsborough, Mayor Callaway.
Here.
Thank you. King City, Mayor Thompson. For Council President Manelis. Keep an eye out for them. For North Plains, Mayor Linehan.
She said she probably wasn't going to make it today.
Okay. All right. Sherwood, Mayor Rosner, I believe I saw.
I am here.
Thank you. City of Tigard, Mayor Lube.
Oh. Here.
Thank you. Tualatin, Mayor Bubenig.
Present.
Thank you. For Wilsonville, I see Mayor Fitzgerald.
Present.
Thank you. And for Washington County, I saw Commissioner Bai. Thank you.
Present.
Okay, for our non-voting members, I do see Councilor Rosenthal from Metro. Thank you. Yep. And we have Kelly Martin representing Stephanie today for ODOT. Thank you. And I don't think we have a port rep. And then I see John Serra for TriMet.
Present.
Great. Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed so far? Anybody that might have been promoted? Okay. I think we're ready to go, Chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Action items. 3A, consideration of our meeting summary for May 20th, 2024. Did anyone see any corrections that were needed in the minutes? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the May 20th, 2024 Coordinating Committee meeting summary. All those in favor, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It looks to be unanimous. 3B, MSTIP Opportunity Fund Expenditure Request. The first one up, we have Diami with a request, but just be aware that The Washington County Coordinating Committee TAC at its June 6th meeting recommended approval of the 5 MSTIP Opportunity Fund requests, which included 3 from Washington County for safe routes to school. However, Washington County is pulling these safe route to school requests and will be revising and resubmitting them for our review in July. So it's a slight change from the pack that you've gotten. But Stephen has his hands up.
Yeah, and Chair, I wanted to make a note. We updated the agenda item late last week, so hopefully everyone had a chance to review that updated item. We did an oversight in the agenda item itself for item 3B. It still refers to a total match amount of $1.18 million. That revised number is actually $788,000. So I just wanted to make that clarification, and we'll get the agenda document itself updated after the meeting.
And is that just,
I think Mayor Callaway had his hand up first, then Mayor Rose.
yeah,
Thanks. And I'm not sure when, if it's either this meeting or next meeting, but when the county resubmits, I'd be curious as, to know what is the difference between, what was the original and what was the revised. If it's a bigger project, if it's smaller in scope, and if it's smaller, I guess frankly, why, especially since it's for safe routes for schools, would it be a smaller request? So just some background information when it comes forward. Thanks.
Mayor Rosner.
yeah, and I just want to make sure I understand when you say, is this the county just resubmitting their projects? We're not, because Sherwood has a project in there. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand that.
That's correct.
Okay.
I think Tim is just curious if he can up his request by the amount that Washington County is going down.
Well, now that Steve suggested it,
All right. Are there any other comments about this item? So do I have a motion to approve the expenditure request, the revised expenditure request?
So moved.
second,
I have a motion, a second to approve the revised MSTIP Opportunity Fund expenditure request. Any discussions on the motion? Dami, do you have to give any presentation or are you good? Sorry.
You guys are fine to proceed.
Right. So Diami, do you want to address Mayor Callaway's comment? I think just essentially what's happening, why are we pulling back and bringing it back forward? So.
Sure. Yeah. So we did a little bit a further refinement of some of the projects and looked into the cost estimate and believed that we needed to revise the cost estimate a little bit higher. And so we anticipate coming back with a request that is fairly equivalent to what we were presenting at the TAC, but it will probably just be one project instead of 3 projects.
Okay. Any further discussion needed?
Well, Diami, I can contact you outside. I'd just be curious then what 2 projects are being eliminated and were school districts, involved in that decision, or is it just something kind of arbitrarily by the county? So we can follow up.
And I do understand there are, at least I've been in, or folks have contacted me about also being interested in pursuing other safe routes to school projects. So I believe Forest Grove was interested in pursuing a safe routes to school project, and Beaverton as well. So there may be additional requests that come forward with in July for your consideration.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye and raise your hands, please. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Don't see any. Abstentions? Don't see any. That item is approved. That brings us to 3C, a TDT expenditure request. This will be led by Diami. You're back up.
Okay, thank you. So this is actually from the City of Tualatin. Two expenditure requests totaling about $6 million in TDT funds, $2 million for Tualatin Sherwood and Nyberg Road project, and $4 million for 65th Avenue intersection with Sacred Street and Borland Road. We did review the projects and determine that they're eligible for expenditure, and the WCCC TAC recommended approval at their June 6th meeting.
Any questions for Deami? All right, seeing none. Do I have a motion to approve the TDT expenditure request?
I'll move to approve the TDT expenditure request.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the TDT expenditure request. Any discussions on those motions? All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
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 Bless you, Mayor Lube. All those opposed? Abstentions? That item is approved. That brings us to item 4A, the Sherwood West Concept Plan proposal. I'll turn it over to Mayor Rosner. You're on with your army of staff.
Yes, thank you, Frank, Chair. Yeah, we got Eric Rutledge and Joy Ch here today to talk about our proposal. As you can probably imagine, we've been given this presentation a lot. Staff has done a great job putting it together, and we're excited to share it with you and get feedback from this group on what we're trying to accomplish out here in Sherwood. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Eric.
See. Thank you, Mayor Rosner. Share my screen here. Hopefully I'm sharing the right one. All right, that looks right. Yeah, thank you. I'm joined by our new planning manager, Sean Conrad, and also Joy Chang, our senior planner. And I believe we've been here once before, so we'll try and keep this fairly brief. I think we have about a 15-minute presentation and then any time for questions. But we're happy. I think since the last time we came here, we took this to our city council, got the blessing to apply to Metro for the urban growth boundary expansion. So that's the change. Since the last time we've been here, we did apply for the entire planning area, which is about 1,300 acres. And we're just right in the middle of it with the Metro urban growth boundary process and sort of how the Sherwood proposal fits into that. And this is an overview of city limits and our growth area, Sherwood West, of course, to the west of city limits, again, about 1,300 acres in size. To the south is our Brookman addition. You can see the annexations that are starting to come in here with the Brookman addition. Mainly, we're seeing residential in this area, which is what the concept plan called for. As we move closer to Highway 99, we get into more commercial, mixed use, a little bit higher density housing as well. And so we expect the Brookman addition to start filling out this way, and for Sherwood West, once it's brought into the UGB, to start around the high school as one key development node area, and then have that move south. And then we have our Tonkin employment area to the east side of city limits along Tualatin Sherwood Road. You can see the annexations that have been happening here recently as well. A lot of really exciting growth and new development in this area as well in our targeted industries. This is a map that Sherwood staff put together recently, just really kind of looking at the full picture of recent west side urban growth boundary expansions and how Sherwood West fits into there on a map, but also in terms of land uses as well. So just really interesting what's happening. A lot of planning going on in this Roy Rogers 175th corridor. That's the outline here in blue. And just moving north to South Cooper Mountain brought into the urban growth boundary in 2018. River Terrace 2.0 was 2023, the most recent UGB expansion. King City, of course, was in 2018 as well, and now we have the Sherwood West expansion here in yellow. So a lot of growth along this corridor through really even just in this small area, 4 different cities looking at UGB expansions and growth. And get into it in just a little bit about land uses. Then, of course, even further north of this, we have the Witch Hazel Village South as well, which came in 2018. So between all of these planning areas since 2018, there's been over 10,000 housing units planned within those UGB expansion areas. And that gets us to the Sherwood West Concept Plan, and again, to the west of Sherwood city limits. I'll just give a brief overview of it, and then we're actually going to go back into the public outreach that we did and some of the details of the land uses for residential and employment. But again, starting here in the north along Roy Rogers Road, this is in purple. We have about a 250-acre employment zone. We're targeting this for what we're calling mixed employment. We really hope and think that we can attract our target industries here in advanced manufacturing. There is an opportunity to create about a 95-acre site along this corner of Roy Rogers and Sherwood. It would require land assembly, but there's relatively few property owners in here and relatively large lots. So optimistic about the opportunities for economic development and employment land uses here. We have two community parks, which you can see here in the darker green. Chicken Creek, which runs through the Sherwood West planning area, is really the key geographic, I don't know, divider of the area, if you will, but also hopefully a place where people come together and connect. We do have a regional trail that's planned on the south side, and it'll run straight into this area right here. To the east is the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge. So if we go back to this one here, really interesting what's happening. You can see the wildlife refuge here. And frankly, urban land use is planned around that. And I think it's just as time goes on, I think this protection of the National Wildlife Refuge is going to, I think, be more and more important and just serve more and more of value to the community as we continue to grow in this area. And so we do have a strong vision to connect Chicken Creek straight into the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge and have these neighborhoods to the north and south be able to access that refuge. The Sherwood High School is here in white. It's already in the urban growth boundary and in city limits. We have mixed land uses proposed around here, mainly higher density mixed use shown in red, apartments or multifamily shown in purple. Housing kind of mixed in throughout is the yellow color. And then as you get to the south here, we have what we're calling the hospitality district or the gateway district, really taking advantage of Sherwood's location as the gateway to wine country. And these hills, the Chehalem Mountains up here, lots of vineyards here. And so wine country really starts, to the west of Sherwood West and even to the north a little bit. But the heart of wine country, Newburgh, Dundee, that area, most drivers coming along Highway 99. And so we have a vision for this area to take advantage of that economy. Just a little bit different view, three-dimensional view of the planning area. Sherwood or Highway 99 is this dotted line here, and it comes into Tualatin and then King City. This is Tualatin Sherwood Road, which turns into Roy Rogers Road, our mixed employment zone here in the north. The King City concept plan, this is the wildlife refuge here. Their concept plan starts about right here and heads to the north. This area here is a town center proposal from King City, so a little bit higher density, a commercial node right in here. And so, the way we're looking at this and fitting our proposal within existing and planned development, of course, we have our own town center here at the historic Six Corners and includes Old Town Sherwood. But King City, as they continue to grow out, will also be creating a new town center here. So our mixed employment zone really, nicely located between the future King City Town Center and our own town center. If we're thinking about, these employees, maybe coming to work from those higher density areas to this employment area district, but also, potentially going back out for lunch or, lunch shopping, whatever it might be, pretty nicely located between the two of them. Chicken Creek comes in. Of course, you can see Chicken Creek runs through and connects to the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge. Again, higher densities and mixed use around the high school. more residential, and then the the hospitality district along Highway 99 as you make your way into Newburgh. And that's a high-level overview. I'm going to turn it over to Joy Chang, our senior planner, talk about the background work and engagement, and then we'll get into some more details.
Thank you, Eric. So this slide reflects the planning and engagement process timeline. So Sherwood West Concept Plan was developed between spring of 2021 and spring of 2023 through a collaborative planning process that engaged a multitude of Sherwood residents, businesses and property owners, local organizations, technical advisors, city staff, and consultants. Next slide, please. So the city convened two stakeholder groups to help guide the project: the Community Advisory Committee, CAC, and the Technical Advisory Committee, TAC, which represented a broad range of interests. Together, these committees represented interests and expertise that helped shape the direction and results of this process. Washington County, LUT, and various abutting cities were active members of the TAC. In addition to the CAC and the TAC meetings, the city provided a wide range of engagement opportunities, including community open houses, online surveys, targeted outreach to high school students, meeting with neighborhood associations, stakeholders interviews, and we created a project webpage and periodic emails to interested parties, as reflected on the slide. With every step of the way, Sherwood community members provided meaningful guidance and feedback, and this guidance has been essential to Sherwood West's planning process, and the design of the concept plan reflects this work. Next slide, please. Part of Sherwood's vision is that Sherwood West is a walkable community with a balance of mixed employment, residential, commercial, and green space land uses. It is a place where families can safely live, work, shop, and play. So from this vision comes 6 key community goals. The area is designed as a natural extension of Sherwood and is integrated into the existing pattern of growth in order to preserve the community's heritage and small town feel. Another vision is the area attracts a variety of businesses and employment opportunities, which helps satisfy the city's need for expanded tax base. Another vision is transportation facilities serve to connect rather than divide neighborhoods. Fourthly, residents have access to a variety of parks and natural areas anchored by, of course, the Chicken Creek Greenway. The area is served by a robust network of active transportation options that are integrated into Sherwood's existing network. And finally, community's goal is the growth and development are well planned and implementation of the area is pragmatic. Next slide, please. So as you can tell, these are the residential land uses proposed in Sherwood West. We have multifamily, cottage clusters, middle housing, typical neighborhood zoning. These residential land use in Sherwood West is planned for a variety of housing options that will meet the needs of a wide range of Sherwood West residents. Was a key objective of the concept planning process, providing housing opportunities for first-time home buyers, seniors who may prefer to age in place or downsize their housing, and moderate income household will require a wider range of housing types than has typically been provided in Sherwood. Example of housing types that have designated places in Sherwood West include single-family detached homes on smaller lots, cottage clusters, townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, garden apartments, and mid-rise apartments. These types will be in addition to the standard single family detached housing that has characterized Sherwood's development so far. Next slide, please. In 2019, House Bill 2001 legislation stated that the area is zoned for residential use that allow for development of detached single family must also allow for all housing types. So the total estimated amount of future housing in Sherwood could range roughly from 3,017 up to 5,582 units, depending on how much middle housing is developed in the neighborhood, as reflected on Table 4 on the slide. The low end of the range represents no middle housing being developed in the low density, medium density, and medium high density neighborhood zones. The high end represents 50% of these areas being developed with middle housing at a maximum allowable densities. While middle housing will be permitted in neighborhood zone as required by the state law, it's definitely unknown how many will be developed. Currently, there is still a strong market for single-family detached housing in the region, and based on current development trends and consultation with developers in the region and housing economists, a realistic estimate is that somewhere in the range of 5 to 10% of single-family areas will be developed with middle housing. Because of the number of variables that can impact the actual percentage built, it was important to test the range of potential outcomes. So Table 4 calculates total units based on the range of middle housing scenarios in the neighborhood zone from 0, 10, 20, and 50%. This results in an estimated overall residential density of 9.2 to 10.6 units per acre, or up to 16.4 in the less likely 50% middle housing scenario. An average density is slightly lower, factoring in the required 15% open space that's required by the Sherwood Community Development Code. Next slide.
Thanks, Joy. Pick it up back on the mixed employment. So back to the North District here, corner of Sherwood and Roy Rogers. This is, again, about 250 acres. It was targeted for employment uses because of the relatively flat topography out here. We get a little bit more slopes as we get west of Elwood Road. But again, large parcels, relatively flat, easier assembly, relatively speaking. And so these are some images of, example mixed employment type buildings that we'd be targeting. The hospitality zone, moving to the far south end, shown here in hatched red. It's about 75 acres total. Again, really serving as the gateway to wine country, boutique hotels and lodging, tasting rooms, some vision for potentially even lighter, very light manufacturing, if you will, in terms of grape or wine production, and having a grape, crushing room, something like that, pairs well with tasting rooms and some small scale retail. This image on the right is an example from Woodinville, Washington. They've really leaned into the urban wine destination type of economic development, and this is an example lodge that I think would probably fit well within this southern district as well. In terms of the number of jobs, we're looking at most of the jobs being in that northern mixed employment zone for about 2,400 total. The hospitality district have about 1,000 jobs in total, and then we have more typical commercial mixed use and institutional jobs for a total of about 4,500 jobs in the planning area. And I did want to just briefly touch on a little bit more detail of the transportation network, which I don't think we got into last time we were here. The main north-south road, or the main arterial that provides connectivity within Sherwood West, is Southwest Elwood Road. And this is rendering from the concept plan. It is showing a proposed alignment of Elwood Road being realigned to the west and then coming back into its current alignment. So currently it just goes straight through. You can see the road cutting through here, just goes straight north-south. A really detailed vision for Elwood Road, even at this stage, as you transect Sherwood West from south to north, for example. There's what we're calling the gateway area around the high school, higher density mixed use. Then you get into the lower density residential, a few creek crossings potentially, and really trying to have that impact the natural area as little as possible. So potentially doing a narrow bridge over these areas. And then as you get into the north mixed employment zone, changing the character again to be more of employment, arterial oriented road. This is the main road. We don't currently have any other arterials planned, potentially a collector or two mixed throughout for traffic throughput. And we need to do a feasibility study and an alternatives alignment study with Washington County in partnership with the county to really determine what this road looks like. Does it stay straight? Does it get realigned? And I'm sure all of you have heard by now, but we have a new pedestrian bridge that is currently under construction. The pillars are going up right now. This pillar right along the highway and on the opposite side are both going up right now. Obviously a beautiful pedestrian and bike bridge. No vehicles would be allowed. And the vision for it is really to provide a safe crossing of the highway, but also to connect our existing community with Sherwood West. And this is Sunset Boulevard, which if you headed to the west here in the opposite direction of how it's viewed, eventually you would hit the YMCA and could access this pedestrian bridge. You go over Highway 99 on the pedestrian bridge, and you land back at Southwest Elwart Road right here, and you can continue north on Elwart Road and basically have a seamless pedestrian crossing between the current city limits and the Sherwood West. So a strong vision for active transportation that we're implementing right now. Here's just another image of the bridge. Sunset Boulevard is here. Get on the bridge, cross the highway, cross Southwest Elwart Road, which is county road, Kruger, which is also county, and then dumps you onto the west side of Southwest Elwart Road, right by the high school. And then just really briefly mention the park and trail system. Again, Chicken Creek as the main open space network, regional trail on the south side. We just finished a segment of the Cedar Creek Trail, and we do have a vision to continue that in Cedar Creek and eventually connect that with this Chicken Creek Regional Trail and head all of that into the wildlife refuge. So pretty strong vision for open space and trail connectivity as well. And that is the presentation. Wanted to make it as brief as possible. I'll stop sharing here and happy to take any questions.
Mayor Lou.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I'm curious to know, as far as like the multifamily housing, are you doing any incentives or any code changes to have that required to be at a higher percentage?
So we have multifamily housing, and then we also have middle housing. So the middle housing, we are looking at all sorts of, I'd say, your standard incentives, variable rate system development charge, whatever it might be. I think the thing that's unique about this particular plan relative to really any others, River Terrace, King City, et cetera, is that we didn't just incorporate middle housing as part of our what I'd call traditional single family zones and allow middle housing under HB 2001. We actually said, we're doing those neighborhoods and middle housing can go in there at a marketly driven, but we also want to create a middle housing only zone. So no single family, no multifamily either, but to actually require that land to be constructed with middle housing. And that's relatively new. Most of it is just straight up market driven, where you set a residential zone and then the developer can, under the code, do middle housing. Here we're saying this has to be middle housing. And so we have we have a slight concern that the market might not be there based on what we've experienced in Sherwood to date. So we're thinking about ways to incentivize those middle housing exclusive zones to make sure that we actually get that. And then we also have our traditional multifamily zones and mixed use zones. Those at this point don't typically, in our experience, need incentives. But if there was, a specific project, then we would certainly be at the table. We have reached out to Washington County Housing Services Division and are starting to explore some options with them for housing affordability.
Yeah, and if I could just add real quick, we're doing the same thing with cottage clusters. because that's an important housing type that our community has asked for. So people have the opportunity to age in place or starter homes, small footprint, single story. And we recognize that we need exclusive zoning for that type of housing, or it's going to be very difficult to get it built. So
Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Mayor Calloway.
Thank you. And I guess, I'm thinking, just because of the recent events out in North Plains, and this could be for Mayor Rosner or any of the Sherwood staff, but are there any pending lawsuits from some of the anti-growth, no growth folks, that typically weigh in on these kinds of things?
Well, thank you for jinxing it, Steve. But no, not at this point. We haven't heard any indications of lawsuits. We've had a couple groups express concerns, and we've been very open in inviting them all to come meet with us and talk to us about what our plans are and how we can potentially address our concerns. There's some wineries in the area that have some concerns, and there's some wineries that are outside of that particular area that like the plan. So it's kind of, at this point, kind of the typical opposition that you see. But we're once we get into, assuming this gets approved, once we get into comprehensive planning, that's where we're really going to dig in, to understand exactly what this is going to look like. And our plan is to work with all those groups, whether it's farmers, wineries, Oregon Wine Board, Thousand Friends of Oregon, whoever those groups might be, to make sure we have a plan that works for everybody. And then, Tim, what can we do to help? Because I've seen this several times. We need thousands and thousands of houses every year, just to stay even, let alone get caught up. What can we do to make sure that that Metro Council approves this, that Metro staff recommends approval and doesn't slow the process down? Letters of support would be great, but I'm more than happy to talk offline on, some specific things that, and help that we could get in this. But, we think we have a really good plan. And, our biggest concern is potential headwinds, starting up, like what we saw out at North Plains and what we saw in King City. So we're watching that very closely. But yeah, I'll keep that in mind. We definitely, any support for the plan that my fellow mayors can give would be great. Very good. Thank you.
Mayor Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Really appreciated that presentation. You might have already said this, but I just wanted to ask if we could get a little more illustration on sources of funding for these incentives. You mentioned going to the county. So is there any ideas on where that may come from?
Yeah, so needed. So
the Boone Bridge. It's coming from the Boone Bridge.
Oh, great idea. Okay, we'll just make the bridge a little shorter so it doesn't quite go all the way across.
The incentives we mentioned are related to housing and trying to make sure that we get specific housing types in specific areas. And so that could be as simple as doing a variable rate system development charge. So a single, let's say right now on the Sherwood, on the Sherwood books, if you build a single family detached home, you're paying this rate as system development charge for transportation. It doesn't matter if you're building a 1,500 square foot home or a 2,500 square foot home. So it's just sort of a natural incentive to say, okay, if you're building an ADU, it's max 900 square feet, you shouldn't be charged the whole thing. And so really right sizing, if you will, the rate of the SDC based on the size of the unit and actual impact to the infrastructure. But in addition to that, there's all sorts, of course, last legislative session at the Oregon State, legislator, there was a lot of incentives for infrastructure related to housing as well. And so we'll be taking a look at all the sources to try and bring, in terms of the city's role, infrastructure. And then if there are site specific issues with getting development going, we would look at some type of partnership there to make sure that development happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could add a little bit on that, when it comes to like subsidized housing, real, low income housing and stuff like that, we are talking to various groups that help and builders that specialize in making that happen. And how do you put together the layer cake funding for those potential types of projects? But when we think about that, it's not just about Sherwood West. We're thinking about it for our entire community. For instance, we just got a $5 million EPA grant to clean up the tannery site, which will allow us to move our public works building outside of our downtown core, which will open up 4.5 acres for redevelopment in the downtown core, which would be an amazing place because it's close to services and busing and transportation and all those things for those types of projects. So we think about that at the whole citywide level, right? And how do we complement all this?
Other questions? Well, I've got one since us Tualatin being your neighbor. What are I know you probably haven't got into yet, but transportation impacts on 99W and that whole area with all these homes and quite a few multifamily development. Were you foreseeing, where are these cars going to go to go to work to and from work? You'll probably add it, like you were saying, you're going to add some additional streets and the like, but the concern, of obviously Tualatin would have is, what's going to happen to Tualatin Sherwood Road, Roy Rogers, Shoals. I mean, that's quite a few extra cars. So what are you envisioning?
Yeah, I don't think it's a great question. So we did a preliminary traffic study, which I actually owe to Mike and to Steve. So I need to send that to them, make sure they get it so they can look at it. And that didn't, at least at very high levels, didn't show any major issues. But like I mentioned, that second or third slide of all the growth, it's not just Sherwood West, but King City, River Terrace 2.0, 1.0 that's still building out, South Cooper Mountain, all of those are going to have an impact. And I think that's not to punt it, it's a conversation for Sherwood and Tualatin to have, but I think it's also a conversation for this group to have, as Washington County stakeholders. So, Mayor Rosner, please jump in here. But one thing that we're, wanting to do here that we're not currently doing, cities with a lot of expansion areas and annexation area, is to require an annexation agreement, which we don't currently do. City of Hillsborough has used it pretty effectively in some of their growth areas, as far as I understand. And so, we're trying to front load the conversation around impact and infrastructure. And instead of just bringing you in and then you're applying for a subdivision and it's really difficult to do really good planning at that stage. We need to get the TSP right, but then B, we need to get, when we get a serious proposal in for annexation, we need to look at that. And if there's not adequate infrastructure, something needs to happen where the city is, working with the developer, cities partnering with other cities, the county, whatever it might be. But I think as far as our community, Sherwood's concerned, we've heard loud and clear, the growth has to be well planned. It has to be deliberate, all that sort of stuff. And so we're not interested in growth just for the sake of growth. So I think, it's a little early to get into a whole lot of specifics. But I think the commitment is to, good planning and really making sure that we're not bringing land into the city and then approving development proposals that are going to lead to an issue is, I think, what we can commit to. I welcome any of Mayor Rosener's comments as well.
The thing I'm noticing, I'm liking your plan. It's just I've seen 99W now between Tualatin Sherwood Road down to the YMCA.
Yeah,
that thing gets packed now in the afternoons and afternoons and mornings, especially with the Hill traffic coming through your city. And I just see, a lot more people being, going onto it that, you're going to have to do some serious, looking at it and engineering and come up with some great solutions.
Yeah. If I could add, I think that's 100% right. And some people have asked, why do we want to bring it all in? And to be really frank about it is we want to master plan this whole thing, not just do And to really do that effectively for the whole thing, you need to bring it all in. And then Eric, talked about annexation agreements and some of those tools. That's where it allows us to chunk it, right, and kind of come in a planned manner. But I think, it's really hard to solve regional transportation problems with just a development, right? I think part of it is, us as mayors, especially on the south side, is getting traction with ODOT on improvements to 99, to address, because Yamhill County is growing, it's all growing around here. We need to make some regional investments in the infrastructure to move people around. And the last thing I'll say, it's another reason we're focused on jobs, right? So if we eliminate the need for that worker to have to go to Hillsborough or downtown Portland or Wilsonville, wherever they're going, that helps too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I don't have a question, Chair, but I do have a comment. Eric and Joy, thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed, and it's exciting work you're doing, and look forward to what the future looks like in Sherwood. I appreciate the conversation around the residential land uses and how you sort of disaggregated the types of residential, and I assume the low, medium, and medium high, you're referring to income. But the thing I want to bubble for you twofold. One is the conversation about low income and how low income residents fit into this expansion and growth came in this conversation last minute. So maybe if we could raise it up and sort of center a little bit and give them a little bit more attention. Because that is one strategy to uplift people out of poverty, is to mix residents with high income earners and low income earners so that people's income level eventually level out. So that's a great strategy that I support. And then the other conversation, the other fold or the other part I wanted to raise is, it'll be really advantageous and exciting if you somehow built into your presentation the city's home ownership assistance efforts, so that, yes, it's great, all these, houses that are coming into the market, but I hear consistently for the past 3.5 years and even more, what is a house if nobody can afford it, right? Like if we set up these structures, but nobody can move into immediately, or somebody with a moderate income can't really afford then we're back to square one, and all of us are going to live to see this, all of us here. So if you could figure out a way to fold into the city's effort and perhaps even expand it to Washington County's efforts around home ownership, I really think it'll just be a bit more attractive, your plan here. You have a great strategy and great presentation so far. But I just wanted to raise, those 2 points, home ownerships and your efforts, and then raise the conversation or the point about low income and affordable housing to the top, and rather than letting it come out in conversations.
Yeah,
Besides that, I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Fay. I'll just mention we met with your new, I think it's deputy director at the Housing Bureau. Really great resource. So we're looking forward to continuing those conversations with her and with the Housing Authority.
Yeah, and your points are really well taken, and it's definitely on our mind for comprehensive planning and, making sure we're addressing these areas. It's really important. Even in terms of, we've started having some preliminary conversation on where parks are located relative to, where the low, medium, and high density housing is, and making sure that's equitable. So.
Right. Any other questions for Tim, Joy, or Eric? All right. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Mayor Bumanek. Thank you.
All right. That brings us to item 4B, the ODOT summer construction update, and this will be led by Kelly Martin. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi.
It's super cold in your office?
It is. I share a heating system with the servers.
Okay.
And so they're freezing it out like a bunch of servers, and I am very cold. So Hi, my name is Kelly Martin. I am stepping in for Stephanie while she is out today. Next slide. So I am representing the West Side area manager role right now. There's 3 area managers in ODOT. So the yellow section there is what I'm representing. Next slide, please. A little bit of information just for anybody traveling around the greater Portland metro area. Here are some impacts that you should be aware of. So coming up in a couple of weeks, we are shutting down I-5 southbound, all of I-5, so that they can replace a bridge going over 26th Avenue. There are going to be overnight directional closures on 217 for the Hall Boulevard Bridge construction, overnight directional closures on US 26 Sunset Highway between Kern Pass and Brookwood, and then travel to Multnomah Falls impacted by the fall 2024 to spring 2025 viaduct restoration. There's a viaduct on either side of the falls, and they are doing restorative work that has been in the works for several years. So next slide, please. Next. Okay, so the first project that is on the west side is the paving on US 26. It's a quick paving project. It started this spring and should be done by the end of summer. Includes Hillsborough and North Plains areas. And we're taking advantage of having the contractor out there to also do some repairs on 2 bridge structures and replace a culvert and add new ramp meters to the Jackson School Road eastbound on-ramp and the Brookwood Parkway eastbound on-ramp. Next slide, please. Next is the Cornelius Pass Road stockpile site. Here we're building, excuse me, a stockpile site for our maintenance as we're fully taking over Cornelius Pass Road as a ODOT highway. The new site also includes constructing a new paved driveway access road to the secured gate of Skyline Boulevard for the maintenance yard. And when finished, most of the time there will be minimal traffic, but during winter events, there will be several vehicles coming in and out of the stockpile area. Next slide, please. Northwest Bridge Avenue, rockfall mitigation. This project is completed early. It was supposed to be through, I believe, July, the end of July. They were supposed to be working on it, but they were able to finish this up in May. And we were able to pave the road as well before opening the road. And I believe that was not originally part of the plan for this project. Next slide, please. Oregon 99W paving and sidewalk improvements. This is a $41 million investment in safe, accessible travel on 99W in Tigard. We're over 1 year into construction, and most of the remaining work is paving the highway. When complete, we'll have smoother, safer road surfaces, fully connected sidewalk network, increased bicycle lanes, connectivity, and curb ramps that comply with the ADA Act and standards. Next slide, please. Hall Boulevard bike and pedestrian improvements. This funding for this project is over $3 million. The legislature gave specifically for bike ped improvements on Hall Boulevard. The rapid flash beacon at Ashford Street will not happen until next year. We've worked closely with the City of Tigard to determine priorities in this corridor. Next slide, please. Okay, so Oregon 219 pavement maintenance. So Region 1 maintenance crew is doing chip seals and fog sealing, 3-mile section of OR 219 south of Hillsboro. The expected dates are on June 24th and June 26th. Those are two separate dates, so the 25th should not have work being done, and it'll be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on those two dates. We opted to fully closing the work area rather than flagging traffic through to avoid significant backups. Next slide, please. Washington County Safety, Bike, and Pedestrian Improvements. This is a all roads transportation safety program. It identified the intersections where high concentration of crashes occur, and then implements proven low-cost measures to help reduce crashes at these locations. 54 intersections included in this project are along Oregon 8, Oregon 10, Oregon 47, and Oregon 219 in Washington County. Next slide, please. The Systemic Signal and Illumination West project. This is another all roads transportation safety program project, and it identified intersections where high concentration of crashes occurred, and then implemented proven low cost measures to help reduce crashes at these locations. There was 100 intersections included in this project on the west side of the Portland metro area. And then next slide, please. The final project is OR 217 Auxiliary Lane project. We're over halfway through this $158 million project, which was primarily funded through House Bill 2017. The project will help everyone on OR 217 get where they need to go, hopefully more safely and reliably. And the addition of the new auxiliary lanes and frontage road will reduce bottlenecks that cause congestion and crashes. New pedestrian and bicycle improvement enhance local neighborhoods and expand routes for people walking, bicycling, and rolling. Next slide, please. The contractor is working on both Hall Boulevard overpasses, widening the northern structure in Beaverton to add sidewalks and bike lanes across Hall Boulevard, across 217. And that was a project that was coordinated with the City of Beaverton and Washington County. And then the southern Hall Boulevard structure is being completely replaced. Currently, you can see that top picture there. There's currently a temporary pedestrian structure going across, and we will be doing some closures to reinstall the structure at the south end. Next slide, please. So here's contact information for the area managers and project delivery manager at ODOT. If you have questions in their specific areas, but I am happy to take any questions that you have for any of our projects. I can probably only answer them if it's about 217.
Questions for Kelly. I'm not seeing any hands going up.
Wow. You guys are making it easy.
Oh, Stephen's got to get one in there.
It's not a question, but I did want to just sort of reiterate, there is that weekend closure of I-5 coming. That's going to be a big deal. So probably all the jurisdictions, if you can have your folks help get the word out on social media and things like that, I'm sure ODOT would appreciate the help.
Yes, we would. Thank you.
Other questions? Just another comment I saw on, it popped up on my news feed about I-5 around in Portland. It's going to be closed both ways to do a massive graffiti cleanup. I guess there's multiple agencies doing it. It was kind of interesting that.
Is that on I-5 or 84?
I thought it was I-5 because there's a whole bunch of, I could be wrong. I was like, well, right, they're finally going to take care of all this graffiti, and on I-5 and 84. I mean, it's getting ridiculous, the amount of graffiti that's been accumulating, and they're getting serious about it and taking care of it. Like John's got his hand up.
Hey, thanks, Jerry. I just wanted to comment on that. We've been helping coordinate with ODOT and Union Pacific Railroad and the City of Portland and Metro to help facilitate that shutdown. We're going to be closing down TriMet's red and blue lines overnight and powering down the system as well to facilitate that cleanup. So it's been a huge effort with a lot of different jurisdictions all rowing in the same direction, and we're excited to hopefully at least start to get that area cleaned up and come up with a plan to make sure that it stays cleaned up.
It doesn't go right back up.
Yeah.
That's
right.
the challenge. Yep.
Yeah. So that's going to be happening overnight on July 14th, about midnight to noon.
Right. Commissioner Fye.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly, yes, I'll ask a question for you.
Okay.
217, so should be a piece of cake. Now that the school, every summer I have this question. So it's a question that every summer I want to ask, and probably in different spaces I do ask. But I use 217 for school drop-off and pickups. And I'm wondering, now that the school is closed summer, does the work become double so that it could be expedited? Or is it just the same amount of work that gets done in the winter versus summertime? Because I assume there's no school traffic, so it's less congested than when school is on. So any light you can shine on if the work is the same throughout the seasons?
So the work is not the same throughout the seasons, mainly because there's different types of work that can be done, what can be done during the wintertime versus, the summertime when there's less rain and the sunshine, we can be out there paving, doing the final lifts of paving versus what can't. So it's more weather dependent. I would say that 217 is still going to be fairly busy with a lot of traffic. It always is. And so the amount of traffic not there for schools is, I don't think, a significant amount of change to the overall traffic volumes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me. Any other questions for Kelly? Seeing none. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Right. That brings us to item 4C, the R1 Act update. I'm going to have Mayors Callaway, Lube, and Wenzel discuss the June 3rd meeting, where little tidbits information came out from ODOT about funding changes they were asking for from the OTC. And you might have seen the County Board of Commissioners released a letter in regard to this. So I'm going to open the floor to the three mayors to discuss what occurred at, I understand, a very long Region 1 Act meeting, and what other jurisdictions might want to do to provide feedback to the OTC. So Mayor Lube, Callaway, and Wenzel, the floor is yours.
I don't see anyone else jumping in, so I will go ahead and do so. At the meeting, we brought a letter forward to send to the OTC from the Region 1 Act. And what it came down to is we actually couldn't agree on whether or not to send the letter. There's a higher threshold, and we couldn't meet that threshold on agreeing on all of the details. But because of the cancellation of tolling and Abernathy Bridge being more expensive and these sorts of things, ODOT is bringing to the OTC a request on how to fund the shortages of the Abernathy Bridge project and the Rose Quarter project, which ends up being about $550 million. And the recommendation or the guidance that they're looking for is whether or not to use bonding to fill it or to reduce the amount of STIP funding for the state, or a combination of both. And that's really the crux of the question and the problem and the issue. And so the Region 1 Act wanted to be, or has requested to be, more in the advisory capacity. It's my understanding that decisions like these haven't been brought through the Act before. But we saw it on the OTC agenda and heard about it and wanted to discuss it. And so because we couldn't decide, we couldn't all get behind one letter, the sort of consensus was each government or each mayor or group would send their own letter. And we had one of the OTC commissioners there who said that public comment and letters are impactful and they read them and they take them to heart. So that was sort of, I think, a brief wrap up, unless Mayor Wenzel or Mayor Callaway have any additions.
I'll defer to Mayor Wenzel since she doesn't have junior hires behind her.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I think that our Region 1 advisory group is so large that when the standard to try to get and write one letter with some interest was really difficult. It was a really long conversation and I guess democracy at work. But I think that was kind of the problem at the end, is that it also was the last topic on our agenda. And so our time was going off and it just seemed like it was just messy democracy at play. I mean, and you have to have, a high number to get an agreement to send a letter.
Well, I think it speaks to the transportation conversations that we're having that are challenging. I mean, it came down to one individual saying they don't want support for the Rose Quarter to be in there, and another individual saying the Rose Quarter has to go through in order for, I think, what the Albina project to go forward. So in order to right some wrongs, we have to support this. So there were some very in-depth conversations about important topics going on, but we couldn't reach consensus. Stephen, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a quick update. So the OTC met last Wednesday to consider the proposal and voted to approve it was a conceptual finance plan for how to address that need. So it included, I think it came up during the course of the R1 Act discussion that ODOT was proposing to defer repainting the Fremont Bridge for about $100 million savings, sell some bonds, highway user trust revenue bonds against future gas tax, things like that. And so I think one of the concerns that was being expressed was the notion that while the immediate impacts, it appears, are sort of confined to the state system, there's also this sort of ripple effect that may spill out in not just the current STIP, the 24-27 STIP, but the 27 to 30 STIP, and probably the next several, because the bonds are going to be 15 to 30 year payback time. So it's and I appreciate that OTC and ODOT are kind of between a rock and a hard place. They have bad choices and worse choices, I think, at the moment. So I understand the urgency of the issue. So I just wanted to add that the OTC had actually gone ahead and approved that conceptual finance plan.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think part of this is folks weren't criticizing ODOT for moving the money around because they know, these projects need to be funded. It was more of, you're supposed to have these advisory committees, and these kind of items should come to advisory committees so they can provide their advice to ODOT and to OTC. And it seemed like that step was being skipped. And that was the frustration that, I talked to a few people that are just, you're supposed to be an advisory committee. We're here to help, but don't try to bypass us. Let us provide our advice to you and, take it with a grain of salt, but, use the process. That's why they exist. That's why people take time to go to these meetings to provide that advice. Is that the gist of is that correct, Mayor Lou? That was some of the frustration?
Yeah, I think that was for sure some of the frustration. But I will also say I did find out historically, the groups haven't been used in this manner. So I'm not saying right or wrong, but that, they weren't all of a sudden not involving it when they had involved them before. I just found that interesting. So, but they certainly seemed, at least the commissioner that was there was open to having the conversation and encouraging him.
Right. Well, thank you. That brings us to 4D, the JPAC update. So Mayor Callaway and Commissioner Fye.
Well, I'll be attending this fun-filled meeting this week for us all.
Cool.
Yep.
Yay, an in-person.
Yeah, an in-person meeting. Yeah. So I've got the agenda up here. Steve, if you want to jump in on any of these, but basically the consent's got a couple. The big one is basically updating the 2024-27 meet federal transportation delivery requirements. Anybody have questions or comments on that resolution that's in the consent agenda? I didn't see anything earth shattering. And then approving the minutes from May. I didn't think anybody have anything on that. The next one on the action items is their 5.1, which is out of 13.6 million. They're recommending that we send 10 million of this to reach funding gaps that we've have in existing projects already. So I didn't see any question or concerns with that. And then the 3.6 million is to facilitate additional projects coming forward, basically be able to seed those and help people out to get the development on those. Questions or concerns on that? Is this thing on?
Yes.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. And then I think the one where, you know, I almost feel like I forgot we argued about this and now they gave us extra time. Now we got to figure out what we want to say again. The regional flexible funding allocation. We didn't get time to talk about that. They squeezed in the last few minutes of the previous meeting. I'll have to look back at my previous notes because I was all geared up and ready to comment on that. And then they're like, oh yeah, and for 5 minutes, would you guys like to talk about regional flexible funding? And we said, no, that was unacceptable. So is there any new feedback on allocations? I think the big one was bonding, right? How much should we bond going forward? You know, fractionally? Or should we just bond all the money? So that's a big question. And there's how much money to bond going forward for the regional flex funds allocation. Questions, comments on RFFA? Yeah, Steve.
Mayor, thank you. I was just going to add to, so the action item or an action item for the JPAC will be adopting the regional flexible funding allocation policy program direction. So
program direction. Yes, thank you.
Right, for future discussions around project selection and priorities. And as you said, there hasn't, to our knowledge, been a determination about an appropriate amount to bond, but this is that, for those familiar, the Metro's got this long-standing tradition of bonding a portion of the regional flexible fund for major transit projects. Typically, it's been the rail line, light rail projects and streetcar projects. And so some of those bonds are being retired, so that frees up some potential capacity to do another bond here. So setting the stage for discussions about specific projects forthcoming.
Yeah, and a lot of that I think focuses around high capacity transit, right? Because what's kind of our move is away from less rail lines. I mean, obviously Southwest Corridor is still primarily planned as a rail line, but as we look at TV Highway and other similar projects, they're looking at bus rapid transit instead of dedicated rail. So how would we bond and fund and things like that? So that's part of the discussion on it. Garrett, question?
Yeah, just a question of, is there any limit on the bonding capacity, or was that discussed?
We didn't really get a chance to talk about how much to bond. I mean, that was kind of the question, I think, is it, do we bond 50% of the capability and leave the rest for allocations, or do we go heavy? I don't think I have a clear, I think that mine was more a question than an answer, was why does the staff recommend bonding in any particular level, right? Can they help us understand where between the 50% and 100%, why would they recommend bonding with one or the other?
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions on the JPAC agenda?
Oh, Chair, I was going
to say my feeling is that we should bond as much as we can. You know, costs are going to continue to become more and more expensive, so we're better off doing it now than later. I can't think of a single transportation project that is that we've decided we don't need anymore. And I'm not talking about how we pay for those projects like tolling. I'm just saying the projects are still needed. And, you know, every single month we start off JPAC with an acknowledgement of those people who have died, you know, as pedestrians, as passengers, and as drivers, or bicyclists on, you know, the regions, you know, the roads in the Tri-County area. And if we aren't willing to bond as much as we can in order to address these safety issues, then I think the recitation of those names is just performative, because we certainly then are not, you know, putting our money where our so-called values are, or our professed values are. So I feel pretty strongly about bonding, you know, to the maximum potential for this.
Thanks, Steve. Tim?
Yeah, I just want to echo and agree with what Steve just said. I think bonding is really smart, even just from a financial point of view. If you look at the history of inflation for construction, you're going to save money versus paying that interest. So I think bonding is the right thing to do.
Okay. Anything else on
Looks like Steven's got a follow up. Yeah.
So, and maybe you were going to get to this, Mayor Delaney, but there's also a kind of a work session briefing item on HB 2017 transit funding, and that's part of the ongoing series at JPACT around setting the stage for the transportation funding package next year. So ODOT and TriMet are partnering to do this presentation on tomorrow's agenda, or Thursday's agenda.
Yeah, I think that was the next one I was going on to, is what's House Bill 2017 2.0 going to look like, right? So I think we've all been talking to our associated representatives about getting the next transportation project plan together and get it going. Well, nothing else. I feel as equipped as I can be. I'll have a staff briefing, I think, tomorrow, and then we'll drive downtown on Thursday for the fun of the drive downtown. Steve's giggling because he doesn't have to do it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Frank.
All right, that brings us to the impact update. Mayor Rosner.
Thank you, Frank. So for the meeting is June 26th is coming up. I'll actually be taking the meeting from Alabama. I'll be out there with 30 kids going to space camp again, which will be a lot of fun. But there's three main items on the agenda. They're gonna go over an assessment of employment lands related to the city UGB asks. That's basically Sherwood, since we're the only one doing an ask this cycle. But they've done some additional work on employment need, jobs needs, and readiness related to the Sherwood ask that they're going to be presenting. And then they're going to be covering the 2040 Planning and Development Grant Program refinement. So I don't know what to expect there yet, but I'll report that back, you know, once I hear that presentation. And then we're getting a housing update. So no real action items to have to deal with in this meeting. The last meeting we had, you just got the same presentation, which was the main event in the last meeting, which was the Sherwood West Concept Plan. So you guys are up to speed on that. So unless anyone has any thoughts or comments on those three bullets I just went over, that's all I got.
Okay. Thanks. That brings us to item number 5, other business and agency updates. And Stephen has some exciting announcement related to MSTIP.
Now I can't find the mute button. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that the board had adopted the MSTIP 3F funding allocation on June 4th. So I want to just thank all of you again for your support and work along the way, and to all of the staff team, the TAC members, and there were other folks at the staff level engaged, and all of our partner organizations. So big thank you for that. In the agenda that was posted online, you may have to refresh, but there should be a link to a news release that we sent out last week about that, if you're interested in taking a look at that. And now the next step is starting to try to schedule out projects and figure out how we actually put the plan into action. So again, just a real thank you to all of you for your support and helping get that over the finish line.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Commissioner Fye.
Along the lines of money, I'll just add on to say tomorrow, Washington County will be adopting the balanced budget for 2024-2025 fiscal year. So there's an opportunity to come and testify if you choose to for 2 hours, 2 minutes, excuse me, 2 minutes in the beginning of the meeting. And our meeting starts at 10. So.
Thank you. Any other announcements or updates from cities or agencies? Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, I think I would just mention that, as you know, the WPES is going through a preparation of a 2030 revised solid waste plan. In that regard, there will be, not this week, but probably next week, they will be reviewing an ordinance that will recreate the SWAC, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, to give it a role in both reviewing revenues as well as in fee setting, and also setting up a committee structure. That current process is currently under debate because, of course, obviously the fee setting in that process affects all the cities in the region because it's solid waste. So I just can't add any more, but you can tune into last Thursdays and you can get a copy of you can look at the copy of the ordinance and see whether it meets the needs of the cities. There is a question about adequate representation, at least in my view, of the cities on this committee and the structure of the committee, and whether it should also be involved in expenditures. So I have been working with Mayor Rosner on this, and we'll see if it's going to move forward.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I was kind of shocked at the limited amount of seats allocated for the 3 counties and all the cities in Metro.
Yeah, that is a concern. What I have suggested, and Mayor Rosner has also suggested, is that it be more founded on the basis of an impact kind of thing, where you have a certain number of large cities and small cities, and that some of the representation, for example, it may not be appropriate that DEQ has a voting membership, and that could be given to one of the cities, or it may be that some of the other ones, it may be that you don't need 2 Metro councilors as voting members of this committee, since everything will go back to Metro eventually anyhow. So I have submitted a letter suggesting some considerations to WPES staff. I just was able to do that this morning, and I have not heard any response back. But there's a number of concerns as to how this committee should be set up, whether it should be more of a JPAC kind of process with Metro being the chair of the committee, or whether it should be a self-chaired like MPACT is. So there's a bunch of issues that are there, but I don't have a response from WPES at this point yet. But I am sympathetic with the idea that there is a potential, there should be the counties as well as a broader representation of the cities on this committee if it's going to provide true input.
Right, because right now the existing proposal that Mayor Rosner sent me had 5 seats total for 3 counties and all the cities. So only 5 seats for the whole metro region for county and city input, which I thought was shockingly low.
So especially given the expanded scope, and Councilor Rosenthal just briefly mentioned it, but the other recommendation, at least that I put forward, was beyond just how do those seats get filled and going to more like an impact model where the mayors in Washington County would pick who they want representing, but also not be advisory to staff, but make recommendations to council. That's a subtle difference, but I think it's an important difference.
Right.
And I just have to say, I concur with that. There obviously would be some limits as to whether they would report regularly. They certainly should be able to report on a periodic basis, and certainly on an annual basis to the council, as well as they can always interact with staff, of course.
Thank you. Any other updates? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and do I have a motion to close our meeting for the day? Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor to close the meeting today, say aye.
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 All right, have a terrific afternoon. Thanks for attending today.
See everybody later.
Thanks, everyone.